Jesus said, "If I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and I will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. And you know the way to the place where I am going." Thomas said, "Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way?" And Jesus said to him, "I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. If you know me, you will know the Father also. From now on, you do know him, and you have seen him." Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and we will be satisfied." Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you all this time, Philip, and you still do not know me? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'?" This might be a new concept for you. Do you know about this phenomenon, very easy and popular in an internet age, called fan fiction? Fan fiction are the imagination, it's just what it sounds like. It's the imaginations of people who really love certain characters in books and in movies and in television shows. And so they imagine new stories for them, and they write these. And there are full sites devoted to whatever your kind of genre or series favorite is. All kinds of stories about wizards that were not written by the author of the original wizarding book, or all kinds of stories about detectives and mysteries. It's a rabbit hole that if you start looking on the internet, you will never emerge from. And the idea of fan fiction is based in generally a love of characters and material. But the fan fiction rarely represents what the author's story was in the first place. In fact, that's another kind of insidious part of this phenomenon of fan fiction, is that people who write fan fiction often are or do become disappointed with the author's own vision for their original characters and stories in the first place. And so they write their own endings for characters, or they write new stories for them that they feel like they, as the fan, knew better what was supposed to happen in the story than the actual author, him or herself, did. They get really disappointed when they get to the end of a book series, or they get to the end of a television season, and they say, "There's no way these characters would have ever done that." But what they're really saying is, "That's not what I wanted those characters to do. That's not what I imagined they would do." And so the ones who are really industrious go and write their version of what should have or could have happened. In fan fiction, the other feature of it that's so important is it doesn't start after the first book, or after the first show, or after the first film. It often is taken some time for these people who have consumed these stories and start to take them in and make them part of their own identity before they can start to write their own stories. I am often reminded of fan fiction when I think about the last little days of Jesus' life. You might ask why. Well, I'm going to tell you. And the reason I am is because we realize in these last moments when we're getting Maundy Thursday Part 2, really. So I sometimes joke that this fifth Sunday after Easter it's Maundy Thursday makeup. We're always thrown back to that last night of Jesus' life again to consider it. It seems odd in the midst of a celebratory Easter season to go right back to the scene of the crime. But that's where we find ourselves. And I think there is no better moment to realize that the disciples have started to write some fan fiction for themselves. That they've already imagined an end for Jesus. And they've already imagined that Jesus was going to answer certain questions for them in a different way than Jesus already had. And nowhere is that dynamic more clear than in this 14th chapter of John, where Jesus sits down. And he seems to be talking to them in a way as though this is all stuff they should already know. And yet they keep asking him questions that Jesus finds to be inconceivable. In fact, Jesus even says in this passage we heard when Philip asks, shows the Father, he's like, how is it you've been with me this long and you still feel like you need to see the Father? Because for Jesus, the author of the story, this has already been handled fully. This has already been handled completely. But it's not been handled in a way that Philip understands. Or it hasn't been handled in a way that Philip is satisfied. Philip wants to see the Father in a different way than Jesus has shown him. And Thomas, when Jesus is giving this great speech to comfort his disciples, thinking that he's giving them the most comforting words he ever could, telling them that he is going somewhere to prepare a place for them, and that when he gets there, they can come there too, and they know the way. And Thomas, just very boldly, says, Jesus, we don't know where you're going, and we don't know the way. And Jesus reminds him, as they've spent all this time together already as characters in a story, that he is the way, but he's more than that, and the truth, and the life. The answer that Jesus has for Thomas is all encompassing. It's not just a simple thing. Because Thomas, maybe in his fan fiction way, has imagined that Jesus is going to give them a map. He's going to tell them the way to get there. But the answer that Jesus has for him is not the one that Thomas expects or wants. It's one where Jesus is telling him, I am not just a way or the way or set directions about how to get this place where I'm going. I'm also truth. And I'm also life. You won't get there with directions only. You need these other components as well. I think considering fan fiction and the disciples in this moment is meant to make us consider our own fan fictions about Jesus. The answers that we think he should give us. The ways that he should tell us to be. The ways that we think he has shown us who God is. That as we participated in the story of Jesus, which is our story too, we have started to imagine that it goes in one direction, making us maybe the author of the story instead of the true author of the story. But we also, when we come to Jesus, fan fiction or no fan fiction, need to realize that Jesus is answering the exact questions he intended to answer. He is showing us the Father in the exact way he intends to show us the Father. And it's for us not to try to cram Jesus into our preconceived notions of what we want to know and what we want him to do and what we want him to tell us. Is to actually look and see what he tells us. And the reason of this is not important just so that we conform to Jesus' story. The reason Jesus goes on and tells them in the passage is because you want to know the way that people will know you're my followers. You behave in the way I behave. You reveal the Father the way I reveal the Father. You love each other the way I loved you. And the only way to get to that deep imitation of Jesus that reveals to the world the love of Christ is to hear what Jesus is saying in Jesus' own words in the first place. Now we get another story on this day that I think is the picture image of what Jesus intends when he wants them to follow and go do the things that he's done and ask of the Father the things that they will ask. And that is, we get this very short passage from the Acts of the Apostles this morning where we get to see Stephen be stoned to death by an angry mob. And Stephen is held up as what we call the first martyr of the church. Now here's the thing with being a martyr that we forget, as we've made martyr a technical term. And if I were to ask you on the street what you thought a martyr was, you would say a martyr is someone who died for a good cause. Half true, maybe. But we need to understand that the deeper meaning of the word martyr, actually the literal meaning of the word martyr, is the Greek word that we get our English word martyr from. Just means to witness. And the witness for Stephen, the first witness, maybe has nothing to do with his death. It has to do that he is able to see the Father, but more so, the witness is he's able to behave like Jesus and forgive those who are stoning him in that moment and not hold it against them. And that is the true meaning of martyr. The true meaning is a witness to the revelation of God in the person of Jesus and the work that we do. But it's also the ability to act in imitation. The imitation of forgiving, the imitation of reconciling, the imitation of redeeming, and the imitation of wanting to provide comfort and bring people along to the place where we are going. And the place that we're going has already been set up, and we're being drawn there by Jesus, who doesn't just give us directions there. He also imbues us with a sense of truth there, and he infuses us with a sense of life. Let us witness